Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. As I predicted, they're going to be coming fairly hot and heavy for a few days. Um, New inspirations, new ideas. Uh, I know some of my followers might be overwhelmed by how much content I put out. I don't expect everybody to watch everyone, but I try to put up things that have a title that might attract uh, a person with a new area of focus into listening and maybe exploring further what I have to say. Um, Again, I don't do it for personal aggrandizement. I'm not trying to make money here. Um, I think if any corporation tried to sponsor me, I would most likely say no based upon what they were intending to have me market. Because I think, a core part of the problem we're in right now is related to marketing focus instead of a focus on what we're marketing, i.e., our own soul. Okay, the title of today's talk is Institutionalized Defeatism and Despair. Now, this is a topic that gets talked about a fair amount in political and economic circles. Basically, anybody that is concerned about human psychology from a macro perspective, but even from a smaller perspective, knows that attitudes can predict outcomes. And I thought I needed to spend some time talking about that in general, and in particular, some of the behaviors I've noticed of that variety that may not be readily apparent to people, either because of where you live or what your prevailing worldview currently is. And so I want to kind of lend some examples here of what this looks like in different contexts and try to show you what the implications are from a grand social and spiritual standpoint that you may not realize you're participating in if you're in one of the groups that I'm going to be talking about during the course of this presentation. Okay, so as usual, we start with definitions. Institutionalized, as opposed to not institutionalized, means that it's associated with some institution of our society, with a particular style of government, with a particular kind of corporate governance, with a particular religious organization or social organization or community organization. And so I'm going to be, talking about this from a broader standpoint than maybe just the woes of the country of my birth, the United States, although that's one of the countries where this gets discussed the most. Because, in fact, the U.S. has been the target of a very, very pervasive plan to move people into this position of defeatism and despair, to make them more vulnerable to programming a new worldview into them and getting them to support this new worldview, whether it's through promoting communism, globalism, scientism, some new age religion. You could go on and on. A certain sport, promoting, God, we need to get everybody watching the Super Bowl and make it an international holiday instead of just a national holiday. And this kind of crap goes on. And this is exactly a large fraction of this dispute that's been building around the NBA, as basketball has proved to be very popular in China as an escapist sport. Olympics, too. There's a dark side to the Olympics, as everybody has seen. Well, maybe not everybody has seen, but maybe you started seeing in the last Olympics. Those of you who have a better memory or a better understanding of history will remember back to the 1936 Olympics in Germany and the political climate that surrounded that, which was very similar to what we're seeing today and about the same timing, in my opinion, to a major war breaking out, another global war. In fact, you could very well argue that we're already in the middle of that war and losing it very badly to the folks who are behind these programs of creating defeatism and despair. Okay, so what other? Defeatism. What is that? Okay, if you have a country at odds with another country, or a corporation at odds with another corporation, a competitor, religion at odds with another religion, a part of your cult that's at odds with another part, has a slightly different belief of what the right way to enlightenment, higher consciousness, higher vibes is, you will know that one of the tactics that folks will use to try to gain the upper hand in such a case is to spread defeatism. Defeatism is the idea that, well, I may be right, I may have a good argument, but if I bring it up, I'm going to get beat. And so I better just keep my mouth shut and let the status quo continue on for fear of losing the battle. So the fear of losing becomes a surety of it. And this is the essence of why folks will use mental attacks on large groups or small groups to foster a defeatist mentality in their adversary, their target. And so it happens even at the lowest level in a dysfunctional relationship. This is one of the ways that narcissists control the person that they're dependent on for their daily fix of fantasy. They make the other person think, well, I'm stuck in this. There's no way I can get out. If I try to get out, it's only going to get worse. And if you've known anybody who has been the subject of verbal mental abuse in a relationship, you have probably heard them talking in that way before they finally got the courage to break out of that battle, that struggle, and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And, you know, that in itself is sort of a defeat, because often they'll walk away and leave behind children, leave behind their rightful possessions, just to get away from this toxic situation. And if you know anybody who has gotten away from a toxic relationship, you've seen some of this spread of things play out. Okay, so this is, I think, a good prelude. Despair, we know what that is. That is when you have no hope left. And there, I think we need to talk about what the implications of despair are. Because I think there are a lot of people in despair who are in denial about being in despair. If you know anybody whose entire life is consumed by focusing on some celebrity or some sport or some fantasy game, uh, goal of beautiness, goal of healthcare, getting the perfect body, making myself perfectly healthy, being the best shape I've ever been. These are all sort of things that I'm not saying these are bad, but these are focuses that we put on to kind of as a mask to get away from the parts of our life that hold despair, that we've kind of given up on. And this is how people get disconnected from politics. And this is actually part of the agenda in many countries is okay, what we'd really like as the ones who want to control your country is for everybody to just not care about politics anymore. It doesn't matter who gets elected, they're all full of shit. How many times have you heard somebody say that? Might as well give everything to the Chinese, they already own everything. Have you heard anybody say that? These are defeatist attitudes. It's a reflection of despair. And despair can even mask itself as, well, I know I might be able to buy a product from my own country, but it costs 30% more than the one from China. And so I know that it's probably bad to buy products from another country. Somebody's going to lose their job, but I can't do anything about it. There's nothing I can do. Despair drives your decision. Despair and greed. Those two combined, absent a moral compass, can make people do some very dark things. And you've seen that if you've lived in the United States for the last 100 years. You've seen it going on as a slow, inevitable process ever since people became addicted to commercial media, commercial entertainment. And it's not that we shouldn't have media or entertainment. I mean, you have to have that for culture. And you can't say, okay, we're going to take away everybody's cell phone and we're going to take away everybody's TV, or we're going to regulate everything that they see to protect them from defeatism and despair, which is exactly what they try to do in countries like China, where there is far more defeatism and despair than anybody realizes, unless they're actually following the few true news stories that leak out of there about, well, especially lately. Look at these COVID lockdowns. When the rest of the world is finally wised up to the fact that Omicron is not so dangerous, that it's no worse than the flu or a common cold, that you can actually treat it the same way, and that the vast majority of us are not susceptible to serious symptoms that would require hospitalization or anything. You're seeing people just say, fuck no, I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm not going to let you fearmonger me into getting any more vaccinations. I'm not going to let you fearmonger me into being afraid of monkeypox. That's spread in interesting new ways, which kind of makes one wonder if it wasn't engineered in some of the same ways that HIV was. And yes, I will probably get attacked if somebody notices that I am actually, in fact, saying that I believe there is a strong possibility that HIV was made in a lab too. In fact, I think that our pharma industry has been making diseases for them to cure for a long time, because their management have to make long-term plans. And those long-term plans are tied to their bonuses for the next 3 to 5 years. And that's all that's really important to these assholes of the big corporations is, will I get my bonus? And if I do anything bad, do I have a big enough golden parachute? And this is what inevitably happens when you put people in charge of organizations that are too big for their britches, for anybody's britches. Too big to succeed. And this is the truth behind what's going on in the corporate world. It's the truth behind what's going on in the political world. You've got a bunch of sociopathic, greedy assholes trying to create organizations in their image that serve their interests because they are so blind that they can't see that it's impossible to succeed when you have that many people dependent upon the dictates of one person. And there again, we can go right back to communist China. You've got a whole party looking up to see what Xi Jinping is saying next, for fear that if they do anything outside of his edicts, they're going to get squashed, or if they have any bad result. So even if they don't do what they say is coming down from above, they do enough so they can have plausible deniability. And because they know they could be whacked at any moment for anything, they're also working on their own to get as much of their money and their family out of China as possible. Because they know that it's only a matter of time before everybody gets whacked, even eaten by their own in such a system. And that's exactly what you see happening in the West, among the beautiful people of Hollywood and Wall Street PR. Not only the ones that deliver the news, not only the ones that make real commercials, but every single piece of programming on commercial media is a commercial. It's a paid political advertisement, and it has little paid product advertisements. And this is where the real money comes from making media. Not from the box office. Nobody goes to the theater anymore. Not from a little bit of revenue that streaming sites are able to get for putting their stuff on your screen. That's peanuts. That's why nobody wants to pay for media, because they know it's a joke. Oh, well, if I can't find it there, I can go do a search on the dark web and download it still somewhere if I have the right VPN. Or I'll wait for it to come out on the one service that I do subscribe to, which is usually the cheapest one, or the one that is the best marketed right now for whatever tribe you're in, whether it's Amazon Prime or Netflix or HBO, blah, blah, whatever. And there's a whole bunch of new ones targeting people in various echo chambers of comfortable conspiracy theory. What's a comfortable conspiracy theory? Well, this is part of this whole thing. Okay? When you get people in this area of despair, some people will disconnect and say, well, you know, my big thing is sports, so I'm just going to focus all my effort on go Cowboys, go Broncos, et cetera, et cetera. And then the rest of the season, you know, I'm kind of at the mercy of my significant other and have to watch the content that they like until my football season comes and I get to watch all my football games. I'm being a little bit sexist there, because there's just as many women that are crazy about football now as men. But this is just an example of maybe a side effect of this defeatism and despair that you were not aware of. And yes, these people, maybe they do often vote in the general election, but the vast majority of them don't even think anything is going on in politics until some big news story hits that is directed at them to get angry about and move them in one direction, one candidate or another, for the general election. And for the most part, they don't try to give you anything that's going to make you want to go out and vote in the primary, because the primaries are where the candidates are really selected. And anybody who's seen what the Democratic Party does, what they did to Bernie Sanders, what they've done to previous popular candidates, how all of a sudden everybody drops out except Biden and chooses Kamala as his running mate, the two most unpopular Democrats in the field, knows it's completely rigged. The primary system is absolutely rigged on the Democrat side. And that's why so many people have left the Democratic Party, even if they have more liberal leanings, more progressive leanings, which includes me. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter and even supported Obama for one of his runs until I saw that this guy's just another Bush in black clothing. And he's not even black. He's got to be less than half black, and yet he's being called, the first black American president. How much bullshit is that? Totally on the basis of his skin color, he was considered a black president. Well, I can show you a bunch of people who are just as, quote, black, have more slave ancestry than Obama. I don't know if he actually had any slave ancestry, frankly. I'm not going to get into that argument, but this whole nonsense of black skin makes you a victim who deserves to get restitution for some imagined crimes that nobody around you committed. Their ancestors didn't commit it. Maybe some of them were involved in slavery. Many of you don't know that the first slave owners in the New World were black, North African, Sephardic Jews who stayed behind after the Muslims were driven out of Spain, and who had become the next target of the Inquisition and were asked to volunteer for the expeditions going to the New World. Many of those people, Columbus was one of them. His skin may have been lighter. He may not have been one of the dark ones, but if you look at the actual accounts, records of the time, yes, many of those people would have been called black today. And they abused just as many Native people, freed just as many Native people from abuse, which you don't hear a lot about, as these situations are so complex. And this is part and parcel to what I'm talking about, because these cultural Marxist narratives are breeding defeatism. They are breeding an idea of hating your own team. Now, how stupid is that? If you live in America, if you live in Europe, if you live in Indonesia, the Philippines, wherever, if you are actively trying to destroy your country, if it's not already been destroyed by an authoritarian regime that controls everything you do, everything you think, all of your money, and basically sends goon squads around to beat anybody that doesn't toe the line, well, then maybe you're justified in not being too happy about your country. But that's not America, folks. At least not all of it. That may be what they're showing you on the news in certain very, very small parts of it. But if you think every American wants a revolution, if you think every American wants to have another world war because of this, because of that, whatever, you've been sucked into a defeatist place, because it's not just about win or lose. It's about what happens next. If you have a defeatist attitude towards the world situation, you could be an active advocate for a war that we have no business being in, because you think that might help your cause. This is exactly why there's been this push to get involved in Ukraine. Ukraine is a wonderful, lovely country. It's also a country that has a very tortured history with Russia. Okay, and that's a very complex and tortured history. And there's no good guys in that region. I mean, this is the steppe, the Asia, Eastern Europe Asian steppe, where tribes of Mongols and Tartars and all sorts of marauding barbarians have ravaged back and forth for thousands of years. And the scars of that are still on those people. They have ethnic divisions. They have religious divisions, especially since they went through that long period of having atheism pushed down their throats. And there's a backlash of very strong orthodoxy now as a result of that. At any rate, this is a huge problem. And the fact that it's institutionalized, it's become part of the narrative of the 5 huge corporations that basically dictate 95 to 98% of commercial media, not just in the US, but globally. This is something you need to be aware of and not let yourself fall down the rat hole of. Because they use defeatism. Defeatism is also like a feeling of inferiority. Oh, we need to go do this because they're getting ahead of the United States. And this breeds true racism. Okay? And let me tell you, if you think Chinese are the problem, you're wrong. It's the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese mafia tongs, which are still very active in the world, and most of them are intimately linked to the Chinese Communist Party, because that's how China has worked long before communism. There was a main government of some emperor or some puppet figurehead, and the real power was held by local warlords and by this loose brotherhood of mafia organizations, family organizations, who maintain those organizations all around the world. And if you don't believe that's happening in the Chinese Communist House, every Chinese involved in that? No. But many are. And there are active mafiosos in charge of Tong activities in all the major cities in the US and abroad. And those organizations are very, very much subject to being manipulated by the Chinese Communist Party. Why? Because most of them still have family inside mainland China. And the Chinese Communist Party has made it very, very clear that they will use those people inside China as human shields. And this is what they're setting up to do right now as I speak. How many of you were aware that China has started shutting down the visa issuing offices of countries it doesn't like? The UK. You can't get a visa to the UK from China now, as of last week. Other countries are following. Why would they do that? Oh, their excuses. Well, people shouldn't travel now because they might spread COVID. Give me a fucking break. The secondary issue, well, too many people are taking their money out of China and we got to keep them here. So that is sort of true. Yes, they are running out of hard currency. They've already run out of hard currency for sure. But the deeper thing going on is they're getting to the point where people aren't buying their bullshit anymore. And people are going from defeatism, which is where the vast majority of the Chinese people were until COVID hit, to what the fuck? I'm not going to take any of this anymore. They went from defeated, the defeatist last wave was the sitting down movement, where young people just, things are so hopeless. I'm just going to sit at home and play video games and either eat some of my parents' food or go out and try to bum a plate of rice and a few vegetables from somebody and keep going. I'm not going to go play their game anymore. That's a defeatist attitude. Now, it's served maybe to some extent to accelerate China's fall into chaos, economic chaos. But it also has basically served to hide the fact that for quite some time, China has been graduating more people with degrees than there's work available for them. And this whole promise of if you just pass the Gaokao and do everything the party tells you, you'll get a good job, and maybe if you're really, really good, you'll get to be a party member. This is insane. And this same insane lie is being told to kids in the United States. And this is exactly why we have so many kids that have these huge student loan debts that they don't know how to pay off. And they're absolutely worshiping anybody that says they'll forgive their debt. This is a Band-Aid on a very bad problem, and it's only going to get worse if you keep putting Band-Aids on it. There's an expression that you need to get familiar with called putting lipstick on a pig. No matter how much lipstick you put on the pig, it's still going to be a pig. And this is the kind of solution that's being proposed by defeatist leadership that doesn't want to bite the bullet and say, we fucked up. We need to change the direction we're going. Everybody needs to take a bit of the responsibility for all the mistakes made, and let's get out of this mess together. Now, this is how the United States and other countries that did the best out of the Great Depression handled it. People came together. They pressured Washington to do sensible things for people that deserved it, fair things, and they banded together in community basis to make sure nobody starved. Try to make sure there was work for everybody, and somehow everybody got a decent share of the pie. This was not communism. This was not driven top-down. Most of the top-down programs that came out of the New Deal failed. They were miserable failures. Some of them were partial failures. Some of the work projects were actually pretty good. It turned out that having freeways across the country was a good thing. It turned out that putting up a few dams to produce hydroelectric power was a good thing, assuming those dams were put up in places that were not subject to earthquake or torrential rains that would overcome the dam, as China's Three Gorges Dam is the stupidest work project ever conceived by the mind of oligarchy. It's hard not to despair looking around you if you're stuck in a mindset of this one life is all I get. And this is the reason why I hope people will start listening to me. Because it is possible to prove to yourself that your soul does not die when your body does. It's going to go on. And where it goes on to is going to be a function of karma. Reincarnation and karma are real laws of the multiverse. They are real science, spiritual science, not somebody's fairy tale imagination like so much of this new age bullshit is. If people are not talking about the next life and how you prepare for it in a way that understands what's coming, they are going to be leading you down some very dark paths for their own benefit, to create their own little empire. Because you know what sells best right now? Sweet little lies. That's what people who are in despair like. There was a story just the other day about how now that Shanghai is supposedly getting back to normal after the insane zero COVID policy lockdowns of the last couple of months, People are going out and binge buying all sorts of crazy things. Washing machines, pinball machines, anything that's on the market that, I got this, nobody else has it. This is the behavior of people who are in despair and who are looking for anything to cling on to forget about their despair. And this is exactly the environment into which people sell snake oil spirituality. Easy path to heaven. All you got to do is follow my 12-step meditation program, and I guarantee you'll get into nirvana as soon as possible. You'll see that bright light and that feeling of connection. All you got to do is just meditate to get back there anytime you want. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. And I don't mind telling you that. I would love to debate anybody from the Buddhist or neo-Buddhist community that believes in that way and teaches in that way of the usefulness and efficacy of their program in a world like today. The scientificness of their teachings in the presence of real data, real experiences that describe the variety of things that happen when you have a near-death experience. So many people have had near-death experiences in the last 100 years because of, better medical technology being able to bring people back from what would have been terminal diseases. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence there for anyone that doesn't want to just immediately discount anything that anybody says that I haven't seen it myself. I've never had any spiritual experience, so it's all bullshit. You guys are stupid. And you need to go back and look at my previous episode on why I think atheists are kind of stupid, naive, and irresponsible. You are part of the cause of this whole thing, because if you take away religion for all its warts and replace it with anti-religion, with atheism, that's stupid as fuck. Because religion, like what I describe as reincarnation and karma, provide a legal framework for people to work within a morality that a culture is comfortable with. And you know what? For all its problems, that's worked on a local basis, even on a country basis, for a long, long time. Now, yes, we've had wars in the past. We've had some humdingers. But the biggest wars that involve the most people have been the world wars. And all of those occurred after we hit the point of probably more than half of the people having no real spiritual belief. Maybe they went to church, but it was more or less for a social hour. And don't say that doesn't happen, because that's exactly what I saw when I was growing up and getting forced to go to the Presbyterian church with my parents. I saw people who slept through the sermons, didn't really have any engagement with anything going on until they got to the coffee hour. And they were gossiping and gabbing about everything but religion. I'm sorry, this is my personal observation, and I'm not trying to cast aspersion at anybody that's a Sunday saint. But it's the truth of the matter. You don't get to heaven by saying, I believe. Karma doesn't work that way. Reincarnation does not work that way. And there are many heavens, and some of them look like hell. And this is the truth of where we are now. And that's why, there's other people that say, well, the Bible doesn't say this, the Bible doesn't say that. This is just stuff that was added by the Catholic Church and doesn't mean anything, or stuff that was added by the Holy Roller Protestants, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you, all of these ideas of the afterlife have their rooting in what's been going on, which is the completion of the seventh day of creation. The seventh day of creation was when God didn't go play at the golf course. God started playing the game himself, testing the final law, the final version of the law of reincarnation and karma. And yes, there have been minor tweaks and so forth after that. That's why we have this test period. And the new law doesn't get out of the test tube. The new idea, the new disease, spiritual disease, doesn't get out of the test tube until it's fully baked. And you don't know it's fully baked until every kind of soul, from the newbiest elementary particle to the loftiest God, and the universes and galaxies and everything in between, can be shown to be able to advance and become servable to the new system. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, if this is your first time with me, this will be useful. If it's not, maybe you want to cut out now because you already heard. But what is actually happening is this whole game of reincarnation and karma goes back to the very first creation of physical reality, which you can describe as something like, excuse me, sorry, I hope I didn't mash your ears doing that. You can describe as something like the story of the Matrix, but the Matrix story only tells half of the tale. And other stories only tell the other half. There's a dark side and a light side to this story, because in fact, the Big Bang was not one universe beginning, it was two universes, a universe and an anti-universe. One of those universes was started based upon the presence of a volunteer from God's team of spiritual scientists. And the other universe was started by an appointee of Borg's team. I call this other god Borg. It's a good way to describe it for folks that are familiar with the Star Trek series. But what it is essentially is, this is the old soul who decided that the best form of government is basically totalitarian monarchy, if you will. A god that controls everything, dictates everything through basically mind control and the ability to create pleasure or pain in their assimilated tribe. And there is a god like that. There are, in fact, many gods like that who play at various levels of that team and have all during the seventh day of creation. And that's why the seventh day has been pretty rough on everybody. But it was supposed to be, because it is a day of testing and perfecting and really understanding what different souls are made of, because it's easy to hide who you are for one lifetime. There are people doing it all the time, and I'm sure you know them. The ones who just get by playing nicey-nicey and, kind of quietly doing what it takes to do better than anybody else, and nobody questions them because they're an upstanding member of society. They go to church and they donate to the bake sale, and they do this and they do that. But you ask their families if they would ever come to help them if they had a problem. You ask their friends, of 20 or 30 years ago, if they still make contact, and most of the time it'll be no. They were kind of using me and manipulating me and pretending they were my friend, but the moment I needed something from them, they weren't there. And that describes a lot of the souls incarnated here. That is a huge part of the testing, because those are the souls that are kind of on the borderline. And this whole event is a sorting. Okay, we're not going to go kill all the Borg souls. We're not going to go kill everybody that's an authoritarian or likes to work in that kind of a system where, you rise social Darwinist system where I can rise to the highest level I'm capable of, and then I just have to serve the state as well as I could and do what I'm told, and I'll get the best raise. And how many people in the corporate world do you know like that? Hmm? That's the whole corporate culture of large corporations, most large corporations today. And they say, well, that's the only way to compete. Well, I guess it is if there's so many people that have that point of view. And this is exactly why we're having this seventh day of sorting and testing. And those souls are not going to die. Souls don't die, they're immortal. But they are going to start being separated. At the end of this seventh day of creation, the next time your life ends, you're going to have a recycling process, a reincarnation. And that reincarnation is going to take you to one of the current heavens that you're most attracted to through your karma, your experiences, and what you've done with them in the past. Not only this life, but all the lives you've ever had. And that energy of that karma will determine where you're going. And some of you are going to the Borg universe. Some of you are going to Borg worlds in this universe. I can promise you that none of you that are in this area of fence sitters or actively supporting authoritarian regimes looking the other way as your neighbors are hauled away and disappeared. This is a good time to tell. I think I need to tell one story from China that I think will validate all the dark things I have to say about the Chinese Communist Party. So when I lived in China, I used to frequent, this was in the age of bootleg DVDs, and, more opening up than closing up. And while I was there on assignment, it was like, great, I can't really get everything I can get in the US because I can't get Netflix here. This was back when they used to deliver DVDs, which was really good. You really could get almost anything. And, so I was finding stuff in the DVD shops in China that, wow, I can't believe they have that. These old movies that I wanted to watch again for so long and never had because, well, I don't want to pay for a rental. And it never comes on TV anymore because they have all this new crap that I really don't like. So anyway, I had a favorite DVD store on the shop, the street of the DVD sellers, which of course doesn't exist anymore in Shanghai. And on that street, it wasn't a full street. It was just like one or two blocks. That was primarily DVD sellers, bootleg DVD sellers, small and large. And, that's on top of, you could almost always find ones on the corner, little mom and pop outfits that would spring up all the time and show up for a while in your neighborhood selling DVDs and then just disappear. And, until this whole event happened, I really didn't know what was going on with that. But here's the story. One day I showed up on the street of the DVD sellers, and there was one store I liked in particular because it was the biggest, fanciest one, had the best selection. They even had a huge selection of classical DVDs, opera, classical music, and it was like for $1 a pop. Wow, I would probably rather have this music in a great performance that I can actually see the conductor and the orchestra and stuff like that. So I bought a lot of things that way. I used to go to the shop maybe every couple of weeks, once a month or so. Well, I went one day and everything was closed. Everything was closed and boarded up. The little rolling things were down, and the street was almost completely empty. And I walked down there to my favorite place, and it was half boarded up. There was some evidence of activity because they could still open their door, right? And so I walked by looking to see if they were open, and the door was locked. So I thought, well, okay, they're closed too. And just as I was walking away, the lady that, I don't know if she was the owner or the manager of this store, she came running out. And another reason I like this store is that this lady spoke fairly good English, so I didn't have to uh, you know, go to my, well, we didn't use Google Translate for much in that era. I mean, the internet was pretty rudimentary at that time, and you had to actually learn a language to live in another country. So anyway, this lady could help me if I had a question, and was fairly knowledgeable about her stock and whatnot. Anyway, she comes running out and says, "Hey, well, don't worry, don't worry. We had to shut down today. The government came, and she said, but don't worry, we'll be open tomorrow." The and she was so proud of herself that she wanted to show that I didn't need to worry. She said, "Don't worry, I'm Han. They tell me ahead of time. I just have to close for a day, and then they take all the other shops. But don't worry about me." Because she was Han Chinese and maybe had contacts in the party. And that's how things work there. There were other businesses on that street that probably were minority people. Definitely some of the other sellers looked like they might have been Mongolian, Tibetan, Uyghur, definitely from provinces or places outside Shanghai. I don't know what happened to those other people, but those businesses never came back. They were replaced by other businesses, maybe other DVD sellers, but there were, I was there frequently enough that I got to know who was who, and there were people that disappeared permanently from that street. And I don't know what happened to it when they shut down the bootleg DVD business, which was not done so much to please the West as to reinstitute draconian control over what people could see and hear there. I think I need to go on with that after, but at any rate, this is what happens, and they always hit the current target first. This is exactly what it was like in Nazi Germany. The first to get taken were the low-class Jews, the ones that couldn't afford to buy somebody off to get them to get their family to safety in the U.S. or somewhere else. And then when they run out of those people, then they go for the next group, the ones that, oh, I missed the flight or the train, and I didn't get away with my family, and I'm stuck here, and my family's trying to buy my way out, but they're not buying that anymore. They need to make an example of some of the rich Jews. And then we started with gypsies because they're persona non grata, and add to that intellectuals and Russia supporting communists, and before you know it, you're attacking everybody that's against the regime, even disagrees in the least, which included some of the very prominent people in, like local and community governments that wouldn't go along with the slave labor programs of the Nazi Party. Well, this is exactly what goes on in China, and anybody who's telling you it's not is a fucking liar. And they pay people like me who come to China looking to make a buck. Well, I came because I was on a foreign assignment, and I started a theater there because I felt that the arts might be important to a China that was opening up. And there hadn't been an English language community theater in Shanghai since the Japanese conquest in World War II. At any rate, there are many people in that country who have been making money, pretty good money, more than they could make as English teachers, by selling bullshit, selling Communist Party bullshit to the West. And that includes foreign journalists. That includes major news corporations who have made dirty deals with the Chinese Communist Party to keep a presence in China. And these people get led around on special little boondoggles, like when the whole thing came out about the Uyghur persecutions. They took a whole bunch of these white monkey people to 3 or 4 places in Xinjiang that were specially prepared, surrounded by minders to make sure they didn't go down the wrong street. and show everybody, oh, see, there's no genocide. Everybody's happy, happy, happy in Uyghur land. We do our little traditional dances, and look, the mosque is open, and bullshit, 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 bullshit. And we got to stop letting people get away with that, because that's exactly what they do in your country when they're selling a political narrative. Now, I have been an actor. I have been a professional actor in New York City. And I have answered calls for crisis actors, thinking that I was going to be helping maybe some police force train for some kind of future possibility. And they make videos of these trainings. And then they use those videos and tell you that those are real live things going on. And if you don't actually know what's going on, you could think anything you want to think. You could think that a few people being lured into the Capitol building is an insurrection. You could think that there was no damage, there were not people killed, there were not black businesses being vandalized and destroyed by these wonderful Black Lives Matter protesters in the cities where that was coddled and recorded selectively and turned into, any incident was turned into, oh, well, somebody was trying to interfere with a peaceful protest. And this is the kind of bullshit that a party will do, a government will do, if they are turning into an authoritarian government. They've already sowed enough despair, enough I don't care, that they think they can put out anything and nobody's going to find out what the truth was. Well, I'm telling you, in all those cases, there were real journalists around capturing the truth. Oh, but they were right-wing extremists. You can't listen to them. That's bullshit. I'd like to recommend, although I don't agree with everything they talk about on the show, and I think Tim Pool is a little bit narcissistic in his, dreams of world conquest, of making his compound and making himself the center of news. It sounds like he's just creating a new CNN of his own branding, but then again, everybody's got an ego. Anyway, Tim Pool's channel is actually a pretty good one. It's kind of molded on the same idea of the mainstream channels of having, maybe 4 or 5 people of diverse opinions, along with some rotating guests that talk about, the current day's events and stuff like that. And it works pretty well, and it's quite popular. And much that wouldn't have got out otherwise has been covered on his show, and that's why it's become so popular. And why now he's come under attack. Doxing. What do they call it when you call in a fake police SWAT attack? Swatted, yeah. This has happened, and this is happening to a lot of people who are getting under the skin of the authoritarians in the United States and elsewhere. Especially since all the truth has been coming out about the COVID bullshit. How governments, globalist institutions, UN institutions covered up where it came from, how it was manufactured. Yes, there's absolutely no doubt that the Wuhan virus was made in a lab where gain-of-function research was funded by the NIH. After DARPA had already said, no, man, this is against the Geneva Convention. DARPA wouldn't touch it. It was not sold as weapons research, even though it was. It was sold as necessary health work. And I have yet to hear anybody give me any kind of justification or rationalization for why you would create a disease to prevent a disease. It makes absolutely no sense to the best geneticist, to the best virologist in the world. It is weapons research, bioweapons research. And bioweapons can be used to create markets for corporations. And if you don't think corporations have gotten insanely greedy and mismanaged enough and huge enough for their senior leadership to think it's perfectly okay to make diseases that you can cure, you're naive. You are incredibly naive. Anybody that gets that much power is going to be corrupted. They're so far away from the truth that things, even if they thought they were doing a good job, there are people beneath them looking to get ahead in the corporation that will do shit like that. This is the mark of the beast, the low-level soul that's not going to get to continue participating in the human species after the end of day 7. Day 8 is not going to be about testing. It's going to be about implementation. When we go to an implementation phase of a real cure for a real disease, we don't need test subjects anymore. We're done with the testing. We know it's covering all the corner cases we need to hit. And we are going to go out and inoculate the hell out of the rest of the universe with karma, the latest version of karma. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to stop them from doing anything evil in one life. But it's going to make damn sure that before they get another life, they're not going to be doing it anywhere that they don't deserve to be. If you're a violent, destructive, narcissistic person, you're going to be headed to a heaven for narcissistic, destructive people. And that may seem like a hell to you, but it's actually designed as the best treatment for that condition. And that's what heavens really are. And God's heaven is the reward heaven. There are rewards heavens where, you know, if you've done everything right and you really deserve to be in a place where your particular talents are appreciated, respected, and cultivated, that's what God's heaven is like. That's what God's universe is. It's designed to maximize the success of responsible creators. There are other universes, the goddess universes, that specialize in remedial work with, you know, the soul's pretty good, but, you know, just kind of lazy, kind of insensitive, doesn't realize that they're making a mistake until they've already ruined something, you know, the kind that just steps in every puddle and you know, lands in front of every pie. And, you know, those aren't the kind of souls that belong in God's universe, unless, you know, while we're in a testing phase. In implementation, I'm sorry, you belong in a lower order species that, you know, is developing, maybe developing at a lower level of creation. Maybe you'll be on a planet where they're just learning how to read, learning how to organize in a tribal fashion. Well, that's a good place for a soul that is kind of at that level that they aren't really ready to be part of, you know, the Star Trek crew of God. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not that you made a mistake or did anything wrong. It's just that there's a bigger program going on here. There's a bigger goal. And this is why I have said that atheists are irresponsible, because atheism is basically at its core stating that you don't believe there's any higher purpose higher force driving, or any force driving creation. And this is irresponsible because it's based on a lie. You see creation going on all around you. People writing books, people writing articles, people making movies, etc., etc., etc. That's an act of creation. Those people, in their own small way, are trying to be gods. Are they perfect? No. And the atheist, in denying creation and denying that there is some higher force that might be doing a little bit better job of creation than humanity, that is an irresponsible, elitist, selfish attitude. And every atheist I have ever known, ever, when push came to shove, became very, very belligerent and argumentative. This is why people love to watch these debates between the atheist and the Christian. It never resolves anything. It's like Jerry Springer show for people that have an interest in such things. And it never resolves anything. And none of those bastards ever want to debate somebody like me. Why? Because I would sit back and refute every argument they had with the spiritual truth that I've been sharing, and they would have nothing to come back with except that, well, you just said that. You have to prove it. You have to prove it, prove it, prove it. Wait a minute. This is not the way an argument works. When you're in an argument, a debate, if you make a statement, it's up to the respondent to disprove. This is how science works, guys. You make a theory, and other people try to disprove it. You don't just say, well, your theory is bad, so I'm not going to believe it. This is not scientific. Sorry. Anyway, I've been rambling along for a while. I hope you found this useful. If you do, share it with a friend you think might enjoy it. Like, share, or subscribe. Hook up with me if you think I might have some insight on any problem or area of politics or spirituality that's challenging you. And until next time, this is Rob Trump with the Omnist Hour. Thank you.